All right, we have right here in the studio MAHMUD, JEGA, Rise News analyst, and Ezekiel Nya-Etok, former chairman of the YDP, that's the Young Democratic Party, is joining us remotely from Uyo. Thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us on News Night. Let's begin with you, Malam JEGA. Would you say that the National Assembly, based on the prayers of the Miyetti Allah, has the powers, to upturn the decision that the 17 southern governors came up with on July 5?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I suspect that if there is a federal law on any issue under the concurrent legislative list, and states pass laws that conflict with that federal law, then to the extent of the inconsistency, the state law is null and void. So in theory, you can have a federal law probably that regulates and open grazing, which will override the state laws in theory, but probably in practice, the way things are now, it will be very difficult to get the National Assembly to pass such a law.
All right, I bring you in, Ezekiel. Let me just quote the Secretary General of MAHMUD. He says, the law would undermine the relative peace and stability in local communities. Should there be a place for dialogue between the federal government and the state governments?
I think, first, I'm not a lawyer. I should be very careful to state that. But certain things are commonsensical. I think that we should look at the root of the problem. It's not today that we had cattle rearers. It's not today that, as far as I can imagine, since I was born, I've always had cattle rearers going around, and I'm talking of the southeast. But we seem to be in a peculiar situation, and desperate situations demand desperate answers and solutions. We are in a situation where there is so much insecurity. And unfortunately, when this started and a lot was being attributed to the herders who are the Nigerian herders, we have to draw a line between them because they are actually the double victims in this situation. And I think government is not being very strategic about it. There are people that are AK-47 wielding, who are ruthless, who are they just cannot be controlled. And I think that it would have been in their place, talk about our northern brethren that are headers, to have cooperated with government to isolate these people so that we'll be able to draw a line. If that line was drawn early enough, we would have been able to have all these headers going about their business like they've been with their sticks, as against or opposed to these, AK-47 wielding, terrorists, because they are not even headers. As a result of not being able to draw that line, we've been thrown into a terrible state of insecurity, and there is no governor that will keep quiet and watch it happen, not even a president that understands the security implications of his country. So for me, I think that there's place for dialogue, but then we are in a desperate situation. So it's not enough for the Miyetti Allah to say, you are stopping us from doing business. What they should bring to the table is an understanding, an agreement with Nigerians that these foreigners are causing problems. How do we isolate them? If they had done that, Nigerians would be too happy to go with them. But because they did not do that, and they seem to be like, oh, yeah, these people are coming and we're working together, and we are not happy, and the Southerners and the rest are not happy. Even the Northerners are not happy, because the double victims of what's going on is the Nigerian herders who obey the law, but are faced with people who they're even rustling their cattle, they're even killing them, they're even raping their women, and everything, because these guys are ruthless.
All right, we will go on a break, and when we get, we'll have 2 more minutes.
All right, we still have, of course, Malam JEGA here. The Miyetti Allah, in making some 12 or so demands, actually are saying that the laws will undermine the relative peace and stability currently being enjoyed in the local communities. as well as saying also, let me get it very, very quickly, government should take an inventory of all the existing grazing reserves, traditional grazing routes, and all of that. Recall, only recently, President Buhari called for a review, or approved a review of the grazing routes. Do you think this approval from Mr. President is what is giving the Miyetti Allah confidence to go ahead and make these demands? Because they had said, that's Miyetti Allah, had agreed that open grazing is not the way to go, and some northern governors also had done that. So what exactly has changed?
Well, the issue is if the pastoralists do not go hundreds of kilometers every year from the north to the south for no reason. It is because there is more rain in the south. The rainy season is much longer, therefore there is much better grass there. Now, if the southern states, most of them ban open grazing, the pastoralists will have to relocate to the states that have not banned open grazing. And it will have some consequences because the cattle will not be as well fed, and a large percentage will starve to death during the long dry season, and probably the national cattle population will drop. But of course that situation can be ameliorated if there are proper investment in ranches or in grazing reserves with a lot of water in the states that didn't ban open grazing, or even in the states that banned open grazing, because they just banned open grazing but they didn't prevent ranching and other methods. So the situation can still be ameliorated,
well,
which is why
Allah is saying that ranching is not even sustainable. According to them, it's not economical and it's not small livestock holder centered.
Yeah, well, maybe what they said is that it is capital intensive. So if you have 10 or 20 cattle, that's not what we are talking about, because we have seen the American, Australian, and the Argentinian ranchers. They have thousands and thousands of cattle. But of course, you can also do it cooperatively. Somebody who has 20, somebody who has 30 can come together and do it. And it will take time to establish the necessary infrastructure. Ideally, maybe we shouldn't have rushed into banning open grazing, except that it was linked to the insecurity problem. So the governors were desperately looking for solutions when something involves lives. So that was the tragedy. Otherwise, there should have been a much longer term program of resettling all the pastoralists and banning open grazing. But of course, the governors didn't have time because security was involved.
All right, MAHMUD, JEGA, we're going to ask you to have to hold on there. And Ezekiel will get back and we'll talk some more on this issue. Stay with us.
Glad to have you back. You're still watching Newsnight live from Abuja. Mixed reactions have trailed the president's list of achievements recorded under the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, as the government claims it has broken several jinxes compared to previous administrations in projects delivery. Somna Sambo reports.
Years on, President Muhammadu Buhari's government is excited about its achievements and is rolling out a list of projects undertaken by it to strengthen good governance and deliver the much-needed infrastructure for Nigeria. Presidential spokesman Femi Adesina describes the projects as jinxes broken by the Buhari administration. But major opposition, the People's Democratic Party, says the presidency failed to inform Nigerians that the quality of life under previous PDP administrations is far better than that obtained under the governing All Progressives Congress due to the high rate of inflation, unemployment and insecurity. PDP National Publicity Secretary Kola Ologbodiyan says that Nigerians are worse off than they were in 2015 when Buhari took office, while describing the projects as phantom achievements. But the presidency insists that with the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation's recent announcement of a net profit of 287 billion naira, which is the first in the 44-year history of the NNPC, and signing of the Petroleum Industry Bill into law in 2021, President Buhari, who doubles as the Minister of Petroleum Resources, has set a presidential record. It adds that Buhari is the first president to start and complete a rail project in Nigeria's history. That's the Lagos to Ibadan Railway. The list of other rail projects completed include the Abuja-Kaduna Rail Line, Abuja Metro Line, and Itakpe-Warri Rail Line. Included in the presidency's list of jinxes broken by Buhari are the first national social investment program in the country's history, completion of the Zik Mausoleum, and restoration of the federal budget to a January to December cycle after more than a decade. Somna Sambu, Arise News.
All right, thank you so much, Somna there. Joining us now to look at, well, these achievements of the president is the former chairman of the Young Democratic Party. We still have him here, Ezekiel Nya-Etok. MAHMUD JEGA is still in the studio with us. Let me come to you, Ezekiel, immediately. While the presidency flaunts what it described as a jinx broken, that is NNPC's first ever net profit in its 44-year history, PDP says it has no impact on the life of Nigerians. How do you evaluate this?
Let's take it at a much larger scale. Every administration has a possibility of two agendas. One is personal, the second one is national. The national agenda is Chapter 2, Section 14, subsection 2B of the Nigerian Constitution that says the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. Now, the personal agenda of Mr. President were threefold: security, economy, and fighting corruption. Incidentally, I found something very interesting, in the sense that what Mr. President wanted to do agrees completely with what we call the national agenda, because except there is security, your economy cannot be good. And when your economy is good, then corruption is tackled, you'll now be able to have welfare. And of course, security was there before. So within this context, I applauded what Mr. President was doing. But if we are now to score based on that benchmark, I think that as much as I know that I will agree that Mr. President has broken some of these jinxes, they are facts. You can't take it away. The PIA has been there for a long time. Then the profit of NNPC is very curious. I actually think that EFCC should look into it. You can't just come overnight and snap of a finger become profitable. What has been going on before now? It's either the figures are cooked up or somebody or people have been sucking us dry. If the first is that the figures are cooked up, then of course the people responsible should be held to book. And if it's that the figures are right, but this amount, because it just happened overnight, amounts have been flitted away by other people, those people should be brought back to return the money. And again, Mr. President has another feather on his cap, which has to do with the NDDC forensic report. The only problem I have is that these things do not address the fundamentals of the marching order, which is the security and welfare of the people. We are not better off in terms of security. We are not better off in terms of welfare. And if your advantages or your what you have gained do not translate to the betterment of the life of the people, then I'm afraid I will not be able to score Mr. President very high.
Let's bring it to MAHMUD JEGA here. Well, like you heard, the PDP says this particular achievements are just nothing but phantom achievements. But let's stay with the NNPC profit margin, 287 billion naira. About 2 weeks ago, the president actually came out with these figures, and Myetti has promised that he will, put out open a financial statement on how these figures were achieved. What are your expectations, and why hasn't Myetti, come up with this? And would you say, just like Nya-Etok said there, that this list actually falls short of the main issues, which security and, of course, economy?
Well, you see, it is good that some jinxes have been broken. But possibly it is true that these are relatively small jinxes, because there are many very big jinxes in Nigeria in the last 40 years which are yet to be broken. If I have to mention some of them, you know, Ajaokuta is a very big jinx. The Mambila Hydel project is a very big jinx. The Ogoni clean-up is a big one. The congesting Apapa is a very big jinx. Recharging Lake Chad is a very big jinx. Probably one of the biggest is increasing power generation from 5,000 megawatts to 10 or 20,000. And then the newer problems, defeating Boko Haram is a very big jinx, and then defeating the bandits and restoring security. So if the government is able to tackle and break 2 or 3 of these jinxes between now and 2023, it will get a lot more traction and a lot more credit from the people probably than the ones that have so far been enumerated.
All right, Ezekiel, it's interesting that additional listed 12 inherited. Now the word there is inherited projects completed across, you know, the country. How does this change the dynamics of governance and transition lessons to learn when another government takes over power, you know, when you have transitions?
Before I get to your questions, permit me to add to the list of big jinxes that should be broken. And probably, if I had my way, it should be the only one that Mr. President should break, and I will be his cheerleader. That jinx is free, fair, credible elections. If Mr. President can give me just that, he can give Nigerians just that, which is within his capacity and purview to do that. Because when the PIA came up, or PIB came up, the speed with which it was done, passed, and signed into law, and you juxtapose that against that of the electoral bill, I honestly cannot, for the life of me, understand what is holding back our having electoral law that we can use to have credible elections. It's so important to me that, unfortunately for me, I've forgotten the question you asked. And honestly, I don't feel bad about it.
Let me give you the question so you can answer it. I talked about 12 inherited projects and what it does for governance and transition lessons when governments take over power. I mean, continuity.
I actually heard you. I was trying to dodge it. I think it's good. We must give credit to any administration that comes and then lays premium, knowing that the money spent by the past administration on a project was not their personal money, but Nigeria's money. It takes a man of confidence to be able to look at the project of the past administration and bring it to a logical conclusion. To that extent, I will give Mr. President credit, and I would wish that others will be able to remember. You know, some of them, he was lucky in the sense that the rail line between Kaduna and Abuja was, to the best of my knowledge, virtually done. But he came in and just polished it up, and it ran. But like it or not, he made sure that Nigeria's money did not go wasted. And I think that it's something that anybody that succeeds, in fact, it's something that we Nigerians must insist on any administration to ensure that certain projects that have reached at least 60% completion, such projects should not be abandoned. So I give them credit, but you see, that credit is in half current. That credit will be fully actualized when the electoral bill is presented to Nigerians, very, very immediate, so that we can have credible elections.
Thank you so much. Apparently, continuity is a big jinx to break. Ezekiel Nya-Etok, MAHMUD JEGA, thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us on Newsnight.